Hello friends, I am Prashant. You're watching educational stuff. Today we'll be having the discussion of the editorial page which was published in the Hindu newspaper. Today is 19th May 2020. Let's have a brief discussion of the articles published in the Hindu newspaper. Jostling for berths. Jostling means pushing off for the livelihood. They are striving hard to get the berth confirmed in the buses. Migrant workers gathered for screening at Vinod Nagar on Monday before boarding buses to the New Delhi railway station to catch Shamik special train. This is a picture which was published in the cartoon of the Hindu newspaper. A vegetable vendor selling the vegetables, and the woman here is selling spacecrafts, aeroplanes, spacecraft and power sector. That is, this really signifies that the privatization of different sectors, that is space sector, aviation sector, power sector, by the government of India. Here we can look into 4 articles which was published in today's newspaper. The first article, a matter of relief, which talks about Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, a relief package by the government of India during the pandemic time. Second article, which talks about the social distancing for the powerless. It is a judicial adjudication, which also talks about the video conferencing app, how the things are going on in the present situation quotes. The third article throws some light on faking danger. It is regarding the different sedition cases by the government on the different journalists. And fourth article, it is a jolt to national energy security. This discusses about the Electricity Act of 2020, which was revised from the Electricity Previous Act, which was 2003. Let's discuss about the first article, a matter of relief. Strategy of promoting supply without helping boost demands may force a relief later. With the announcement of the financial branch of Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, the COVID-19 relief package, a pattern to the government's approach is visible. Boosting availability of capital on easy terms. This is to give a strong supply side push by boosting availability of capital on easy terms, keeping income and wage support schemes to the minimum. Empower constituencies ranging from farmers and workers to businesses, and finally, the most important, keep the damage to the fisc as low as possible. The fisc impact of 20 lakh crore package is estimated by the economists between 2 to 3% of GDP, and that includes draws from provisions already made in the budget for this fiscal. The third point is liquidity support. The pillar on which the package rests is liquidity support, so that the businesses can crank up again and set the economic cycle back in motion. The option of the demand side stimulus through a resort of deficit financing seems to be reserved for the future date if the infection does not subside or second wave begins promoting another lockdown. Fourth point in this article is strategy to drive consumption. Strategy to drive consumption by, say, suspending the GST for a couple of months or at least cutting rates temporarily, combined with a liquidity boost, may have worked better under prevailing conditions. The center's problem is that its revenues are a fraction of what it would have been in a normal situation, but even given this handicapped situation, a fiscal stimulus could have been fitted into the overall package. This could bring a revenue to the compensate for the cut. Fifth point, increasing the budget of MGNREGA. MGNREGA stands for Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. It is an Indian labor law and a social right measure that aims to guarantee the right to work. It aims to enhance livelihood security in rural areas by providing at least 100 days of wage employment in the financial year to every household whose adult members volunteer to do unskilled manual work. With the migrants now returning to their villages, NREGA can be leveraged to keep them occupied with a meaningful work. Demand of the state for higher borrowings limit has been granted. The demand of the state for higher borrowings limit has been granted but with a clear reform milestone that they have met. It remains to be seen if the states are enthusiastic to fall in time. In a conclusion, it is possible to satisfy all sections of society, especially in a pandemic situation. It has to be said that the government has taken a huge gamble of refusing to borrow and spend more on the boosting demands. If the strategy of the boosting supply works, it is fine, but if it doesn't, the government will be faced with a bigger problem down the line. Let's look into the second article, that is social distancing from the powerless. Judicial abnegation by the top court is not healthy for institution trusted as being a protector for an enforcer of rights. The article articulates isolated court proceedings on migrant workers, a virtual court, case of walking migrants, High Court shows the way. Abnegation is the action of renouncing or rejecting some self-denial. Social distancing from the powerless. An isolated court, we will discuss this from the different points. So the first point is isolated court. Supreme Court of India and its famous app Video, which was a video conferencing app for the court proceedings. It is a kind of virtual court. Court proceedings on the matter of migrant workers who are walking back home in the midst of a national lockdown, an issue which has now attracted universal disapproval on social media and other platforms. A virtual court. A virtual court on a video app is different from an open court in a physical space, as a movie or a television series is a form of an actual event. A judicial hearing on a video needs different skill tests. It calls for a visual performance art on the part of lawyers as well as judges. Adapting video conferencing apps for virtual courts not going to be able to evolve an absolute perfect statement or perfect system to replace or substitute the earlier system. The case of walking migrants. The case of walking migrants, the petition presented by an advocate. These petitions on different issues have been dismissed and he had been threatened with the imposition of the cost. According to the Solicitor General submission, the lawyer appeared to be combating COVID-19 unemployment by creating work for himself. This is totally injustice. The dismal was after a statement of Solicitor General that were no migrant workers walking home on the roads for hundreds of kilometers. He wanted that the statement of government to be enforced in a manner that the migrant would not be required to walk endlessly on the road. The petitioner advocate mentioned the cause of migrants who have been run over by the train in Aurangabad, Maharashtra earlier this month while walking back home. The bench responded that it could not prevent people from walking anywhere they wanted. Therefore, the advocate of PIL fame sought a persist and stood his ground. The bench gave him short shrift to matter and imposed a cost of 1 lakh to deter further arguments. The letter overheard the presiding judge instruct the stenographer to delete the line imposing these costs. The microphone of the petitioner lawyer was muted and he was locked out of hearing. Before the next matter was called, the bench did ask the Solicitor General if anything could be done conferencing or concerning the issue of the migrant workers. He indicated that not much seemed possible according to the instructions. In the normal times, this could have been possible, but it is now different because it is a virtual. High Court shows the way. In contrast, on the very day, the same court granted some modicum of relief to the real estate industry in the respect of its loans. By another order, industries with unpaid wages during the pandemic were protected from prosecution. The contrast was only heightened when the High Court of Madras and High Court of Andhra Pradesh on the same day eloquently voiced their concern over migrant labor walking back. The High Court of Madras even sought responses and status reports on the issue from the central and state governments. In our constitutional scheme, High Courts are on the par with the Supreme Court with the enforcement of the fundamental rights of citizens. Let's look into the third article, which says the faking danger. Use of sedition law to fight fake news is an attempt to suppress inconvenient reports. The frequency with which the journalists have been arrested since the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic is quite disturbing. The reasons given by the police across India for arresting reporters and editors of news portals indicate that special provisions enacted to prevent the spread of rumor during the disasters are being used to suppress reporting on political developments and possible governmental corruption. The Editors Guild of India, as you can see in the picture, has seen a growing pattern in the misuse of criminal laws to intimidate journalists. The concern is not misplaced. In the Andamans, a reporter was arrested for a social media posting claiming people who have contacted a COVID-19 positive patient over the phone were also being quarantined. In Coimbatore, a police arrested a news portal founder following a report on alleged corruption in food distribution as a part of local administration's effort to handle the fallout of pandemic. This is an article of sedition law which fights against fake news. This is the fourth article, a jolt to energy security. The amendment to the electricity bill will only burden states and erode the concurrent status given to electricity. Erode here means to harm the concurrent status. Concurrent status means the perfect state or the existing capable state. The article emphasizes on the 4 points which are jeopardize the country's energy security, troubles of DISCOM, factors of renewable energy sector, Electricity Act 2020. The article focuses on these 4 points, so let's have the intuitive look around this. Finance Minister's proposal for the reform of power tariff policy can erode the concurrent status accorded to electricity. If implemented, they will not only weaken the control of states over an industry supplying a basic human necessity such as electricity, but also harm the center with a pincer-like weapon which would choke the distribution utilities or companies, that is DISCOMs, and jeopardize the country's energy security. As most private developers came forward to invest in generation, DISCOMs were required to sign long-term power purchase agreement, that is PPA, committing to pay a fixed cost to the power generator, irrespective of whether the state draws the power or not, and a variable charge for fuel when it does not. The PPA signed by the DISCOMs were based on over-optimistic projection of power demand estimated by CEA, that is Central Electricity Authority, a central agency. The 18th Electric Power Supply Survey (EPS) overestimated peak electricity demand for 2019 to 2020 by 70 gigawatt. The 19th EPS, that is Electric Power Survey, published in 2017 by 25 gigawatt, both pre-COVID-19. In the event, DISCOMs locked into long-term contracts end up servicing perpetual fixed costs for power not drawn. NTPC Limited in Karnataka alone received 48,000 crore as an ideal fixed cost during 2018 to 19, operating at a plant load factor of only 22%. Due to the CEA's overestimate, that is Central Electricity Authority's overestimates, the All India plant load factor of the coal power plant is at an abysmal, that is poor, state of 56% even before the COVID situation. The factors of renewable energy. From 2010, solar and wind power plants were declared as a must-run, requiring DISCOMs to observe all renewable power as long as there was sun or wind in excess of mandatory renewable purchase obligations. This means backing down the thermal generations to accommodate all available green power, entailing further ideal fixed costs payable on account of two-part tariff PPAs. In 2015, the centre announced an ambitious target of 175 GW of renewable power by 2022, offering a slew of concessions to renewable energy developers and aggravating the burden of DISCOMs. Incidentally, China had an advantage of $13 billion in the last 5 years from India's solar panel imports. What is Electricity Act 2020 and what are the changes from 2003 Electricity Act to 2020? The first amendment proposes sub-franchises. Franchise means an authorization granted by the government or company to an individual or a group, enabling them to carry out specified commercial activity. So the first amendment proposes sub-franchises, presumably private, in an attempt to usher in markets to the back door. In going by privatization experiments, private sub-franchises are likely to cherry-pick the most profitable segments of the DISCOM's jurisdiction. The Electricity Bill 2020, containing the proposed amendments, is silent on whether the private sub-franchises would be required to buy the expensive power from the DISCOM or procure cheaper power directly from the power exchanges. If it is the first, the gains from the move are doubtful, since the room for efficient improvement is rather restricted in already profitable regions to attractive to sub-franchises. If it is the second, DISCOMs will then be saddled with a costly power purchase from the locked-in PPAs and fewer profitable areas from which to recover it. Secondly, the amendment proposes even greater concessions to renewable power developers, with its cascading impact on idling fixed charges, impacting the viability of DISCOM even more. The third point, the most controversial amendment proposed seeks to eliminate in one stroke the cross subsidies in retail power tariff. This means each consumer category would be charged what it costs to service that category. Rural consumers requiring long lines and numerous step-down transformers and the attendant higher line losses will pay the steepest tariff. The fourth point, state regulators will henceforth be appointed by the Central Selection Committee, the composition of which inspires a little confidence in its objectivity, destroying not only the regulatory autonomy and independence but also the concurrent status of electrical sector. In a conclusion in this article, when the country is relying under the economic impact of the novel corona crisis, the Electricity Bill 2020 is indeed a disingenuous document drafted to shift the burden imposed by the short-sighted policies of the centre onto hapless states, with a serious consequence for the nation's energy sector security. And that's it for today. This is an article discussion of the Hindu editorial of 19th May 2020. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.